ready?
What is the Sheffield Wheat Experiment? How do you explain it to the uninitiated?
Really badly. I really wish I had a succinct answer to how to talk about the Sheffield Wheat Experiment, but I don't. Oh, well, I mean, it's always changing, and I guess it means different things to different people. What I do know is that it is a way of bringing Sheffield residents together to collectively produce a wheat for and of Sheffield. It's a work that is trying to explore another way of relating to our food and the environment that it's grown in. It's a way of going on a collective journey to look at why we need to change our food system. And I guess it's an opportunity for people to get close to a crop that they normally see from a distance, often out of a train window. It's a chance to work with bakers and the wider community to process the wheat and bake it and eat it. Well, the seed we're growing is a diverse population, so that means there are many individual plants that are not genetically identical, but legislation in this country doesn't allow farmers to get hold of this seed unless it's in really small sample amounts. The wheat that farmers grow instead are monocultures, so that's one single variety. But these monocultures, they're reliant on an industrial food system with chemical inputs and machine processing to grow the wheat and to make our daily bread. But the problem is that this industrial takeover of our wheat has proved to be really destructive for soil health and for biodiversity around the farm, for the bread, which has been stripped of its nutrition and taste. So population wheats are an alternative to this system and are really important for our future. So over time they adapt to their environment. Some plants die out, others thrive, and the population becomes suited to the place that they're grown. Their diversity also means that they're more resilient to pests, disease and extreme weather events, which we're going to see a lot more of as the effects of climate change increase. So one of the ideas behind the experiment is that we have many people growing very small amounts and then they collectively come together to pull the grain and then re-sow as a way of bulking up the seed and creating a wheat for Sheffield. So our entire food and farming system has been shaped by a legal and financial framework that incentivises yield at all costs. So in the Sheffield Wheat Experiment, we explore the many challenges and try to enact and reimagine new grain economies from the seed, the farmers, the millers, the bakers, and of course all of us who eat the foods and produce that we make. Each year we send out gift packs of a population wheat, and then people grow that in their garden. Think of it like a dispersed farm across the city.
Welcome to the Darnell Allotment Project. And one of the things last year was we got involved in the Sheffield Wheat Project. And last October these were planted and they stayed dormant for a while, and now they're starting to come to life. Look at this beautiful wheat. It's now at least 2 foot tall.
And at the end of the year, once it's grown, they come together and hand process the wheat. I think in the times that we're living in now, where we're fully aware of how the systems that we live by, including our food systems, how they don't function on so many levels and how they're quite deeply unfair and problematic for the people in them and also the people they deliver for and the environment. So I think suddenly there's a kind of real value in the process of reimagining and rethinking and playing. The more you dig, the more you realise wheat's a lens to see the food system by, and that reveals the cracks and a broken system that we're in now. There's a learning curve with the Sheffield Wheat Experiment because we don't know what we're doing and each year we learn.
So yeah, growing the wheat was at the heart of what we were doing, and that meant it shaped the rest of the year, and the activities that surrounded it were given a rhythm. After the wheat's sown and it's had an initial flurry of growth, there's a dormant phase where we're not needed so much as gardeners physically, but that meant for the programme we had space to come together and imagine and brainstorm a bit. So we had a talks programme where we heard from a baker, a farmer, an historian, academic and food producer. We had a series of baking workshops where participants had the chance to actually get to know the flour that was the result of the wheat that they had grown. Sheffield Wheatley was a newsprint and that captured the stories from people involved in the project, from the micro growers to community groups. In addition to the programme, we've also been working with local bakers to give them support in learning how to bake with our grain.
We've worked with a brewer and we've produced our own Growers Union bottled beer, which has been a fantastic success. We've loved seeing it in production.
So each year we have between 200 to 250 micro farms, micro plots, and this year we're actually working with around 1,000 micro growers.
As well as the small micro growers growing in their gardens and allotments, we have two larger sites, and it's in these half-acre sites we can really explore and practice how things would have been done, our heritage. The hand harvesting kind of enables us to explore coming together as a community, to be reliant on each other, and we're really interested in looking at the skills that were used in hand harvesting.
Those two together,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So yeah, don't move your left hand.
Yeah.
Twist both of them together really tightly,
Yeah.
and then basically fold those two to one of the bands. About an acre, someone could reap with a hook, acre and a half, something like that, averagely. Yeah, records of up to sort of 3, 4, even 5 acres a day with one of these, okay? Has anybody used any of this paraphernalia in front of us? Kind of how have you guys been harvesting your wheat? I appreciate most people are very small scale, so yeah, someone did scissors earlier. They work typically on a very tiny scale, but is any of this look familiar to anybody? Yeah, we'll sort of swap around, experience different tools. There's different types of hooks here. I'll come on to them shortly.
Each time we harvest on the fields, we learn so much. We are so respectful of the skills and systems involved in hand harvesting. From an onlooker, it seems so simple, but it's really not at all. A community survival depended on how well they worked together and the skills they had. Harvesting out in the fields, you get a real sense of what it must have been like and how important those interdependencies were. You couldn't simply pop down the shops to get your flour. So if the harvest failed, you'd go hungry. And it began to feel really close to home. This project began in lockdown. The flour had disappeared from the supermarket shelves, and the vulnerability of our current global food system felt really tangible.
The whole purpose of the project has not been simply one of yield. We've been trying to do many other things, but what we've wanted to do is to produce enough seed for the project so that we can experiment with bakers, so we can experiment with young people, so that the communities around us can plant small amounts of seed every year. If I could reimagine a food system, it would be one in which every morning you'd wake up in the city and you would see your community participating in the production, processing and distribution of food. Food is what sustains us all. It's a fundamental part of our life. And a good food system is where communities participate in growing that food. They benefit from doing that economically, they benefit from it socially because it's done collectively, and they benefit from it in terms of our experience of life. And secondly, It's where you're confident about giving that food to your kids, about sharing it with people, where it hasn't required lots and lots of carbon to bring it from one continent to another continent, where its impact on your diet and on your health and your sense of identity is fundamental to who you are and where you are. So a good food system is about identity, it's about community, and it's about people. And we haven't just lost it, we've buried it. It is completely underground. And in our world, when you can only go to a supermarket, one of the big five, to actually purchase food, we've really lost something important in our society.
So the rest of the field, weather depending, will be harvested by a number of the growers that are also taking part in the Sheffield Wheat Experiment. They might be growing small amounts in their garden, but they'll be coming onto the field to helping us harvest the rest. Cut to shot of absolute pouring rain.
This is more just grass mowing at the moment, so.
Everyone turned up and everyone was really up for it and really joyous, and then we harvested and celebrated, and that was just so, I was proud then because something had been created. Thank you so much for coming. We're very grateful, and we know there's always a risk, especially with the forecast as it was. It's been raining heavily all morning, so first of all I want to say a huge thanks to our harvest workers. So a massive thank you to them for harvesting the rest of the field. What we would like you to do is something called gleaning. Often some of the poorest in society would be allowed onto the farmer's field, and after harvest they would go through the field picking up whatever was left over. And this was really important, and it's actually been practiced until fairly recently, and often in countries around the world it's in law that they're allowed to do that, and that it's morally frowned upon if the farmers start cleaning up too early. So this is the bit where we're picking up all the last bit of food.
So the threshing day was an opportunity for the people who took part in the experiment and grew the wheat to come together in order to learn and participate in processing it.
We have a tiny thrasher this year, we have the flails, and then we have stations basically.
Essentially we're in the belly of a combine harvester, but all of the processes that we are going to be doing today takes the wheat that we've just scythed to clean grain, ready to either sow again or to turn into flour.
In here, each of these Essentially, sheaves is a flour that has produced a single grain. And so in here, you have your grain. And so threshing is essentially doing this in order to break up that ear and release all of the grains that are inside, which is then mixed with the chaff. And then winnowing is using air to blow that chaff away. And then you're left with your mostly clean grain that may then need another process of screening in order to get rid of the extra debris that's in there. These grains are what's then milled to produce flour.
The processing is where it gets quite complicated with wheat.
We're hosting an event today called Our Bread because we've done lots of thinking about the growing and the food systems and everything that surrounds the wheat, except we haven't got together and eaten it yet. So yeah, it felt really important to bring all the conversations together around tables of bread.
Amazing.
So then you're kind of eating your toil. You're eating you're eating all the things that you know what's gone into and all the work that's gone into it, and that's there's something quite deep, a sense of belonging and a sense of past and a sense of rootedness in that's really digs things up, I think. Anyone that's grown something knows that.
I grew up in my childhood, at least I was in a village in Pakistan, and so you saw wheat growing, you saw the things growing, and you saw the whole process, you were part of it. So I thought, the ladies we support, some of them are from, many of them are from back home and from rural areas, and I thought they might enjoy that, connect back to that sort of feeling of being involved in growing wheat, because here you just get the flour. So there are traditional breads that South Asian people make, so we were asked if we would like to do a demo of those breads. So that's roti and paratha. So our ladies came and they had a table and they made rotis, they made the dough, and they showed everybody, and they made some parathas.
I would really like to see the wheat continuing every year to be sown. And whether we focus more on, if you like, sharing that knowledge so that a few people every year get that experience, so that it's not lost again. Because I feel that if there's one thing that we've done, is that we've reconnected a part of our city community with something that our city used to be connected to, and I'd like to see that continue.
I think one of the joys of being an artist is not to have an outcome, not having a goal in mind. And by not having those things, it freed us up to be really responsive and intuitive along the way. I think that in turn gave us a real sense of, or a deeper sense of, the loss and disconnection that we found. And I think that really told us a story of industrialisation, and however effective it is in terms of efficiency, it became really, really apparent how ineffective it is in terms of community, health, environment, the kind of interdependencies and the collectiveness, the greyness, the matter that doesn't often have a clear description or number. By going on the journey and noticing this, we had an opportunity to sense it and experience it by being in the field together, by labouring, by the toil and the sweat. It gave a real richness to the sense of community and interdependence that was vital to making food much more than a commodity. And I think that in turn allowed us to think about what was valuable in our food system and what we've lost. And we're not advocating that we change the current grain system by everyone hand sowing wheat, but by doing it, we discovered that there were certain values that we can't afford to lose.
We think we've got one more year in this field that we're sowing in now. The heritage funding part is over, and we've done our best to give all of the micro growers what they need to carry on themselves if they wish to. So it's our time now to stop. Once the seed's in the ground this year, it's our time to stop, rest, nourish ourselves, and think about what's next. And that's okay, that's good enough.